Hello, my name is Scott Davis. Welcome to New World Birth. This is the weekly neutrino forecast for August 9th to August 15th of 2015. And on August 9th, we've got the sun. You can see it denoted right here by this black circle and a dot in it. It's in Leo, and it's also in the 7th hexagram. And on the outside of the wheel, we have the chop mark for the 7th hexagram. Numbered from bottom to top, the 7 goes yin, yang, yin, 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 yin. And then the 7th hexagram is mapped to an opening in an energy channel called the gate. And right here we have the 7th gate of the role of the self, the army, the point of convergence by design, the need for leadership to guide and order society that engenders transference and thus influence, located in the G center in a collective logic energy path in the understanding circuit called the channel of the alpha, a design of leadership for good or bad that connects to its harmonic, the 31st gate of leading influence, the law of friction, whether active or passive. And I found human design to be amazingly accurate in describing the person, that I use it as my primary tool when I provide readings. And we've got the following activated gates on August 9th. We've got the sun in the 7th gate with the earth in the 13th gate, the north node in the 46th gate, the south node in the 25th gate, Mercury is in the 59th gate, excuse me, Venus is retrograde in the 29th gate. Mars is in the 56th gate. Jupiter is also in the 29th gate with retrograde Venus. Saturn is newly direct in the 14th gate. Uranus is retrograde in the 51st gate. Neptune is retrograde in the 37th gate. And Pluto is retrograde in the 38th gate. So obviously not every gate activation forms a channel, but this information can be very helpful if you know your own human design chart, because some of these transits will form channels with potentials in your personal body graph. And the neutrino forecast is just a weather report. No matter what the weather, your individual strategy and authority is the correct choice to have an authentic experience regardless of the program. As Ra Uru said, whatever the weather is going to be, you have your neutrino umbrella. As long as you're experimenting with your strategy and authority, the weather is for your pleasure. And as we begin the week, we've got two channel definitions due to the transit field, with Venus and Jupiter in the 29 and the North Node in the 46. We've got the channel of discovery, which is the design of succeeding where others fail and failing where others succeed, which is going to be with us until August 12th, bringing us the energy that if we make a commitment to something, we have to abandon ourselves to it during the greater portion of this week. It's through these experiences that we realize that there's no such thing as failure or success, only continual discovery. And so this is about being in being in the now, in the experience of being alive. The defined G center could influence those without to obsess about where they're headed, where they'll find love. The defined sacral center, this could influence non-generator types and feeling busy and having the endurance to work. Obviously, don't get used to it. They also may think they know when enough is enough, which could lead to a premature or abrupt end to something that needs more time. And then with the South Node in the 25 and Uranus in the 51, we've got the channel of initiation, a design of needing to be first, until November 29, which is a very long-term transit, and especially defining this channel, which is nicknamed shock initiation, where we might experience some sort of leap into the unknown. This is an individual channel that empowers through the courage to take a chance on something unknown and deal with the consequences afterwards. Obviously, following your strategy and authority will help you determine if this initiation is correct for you, or faced with multiple possibilities to experience a quantum shift, which ones, if any, are correct for you. In the mundane world, I'd expect that people will be more likely to become more competitive, pushing the boundaries, getting outside of their comfort zone, which will be shocking to themselves and others, as they feel the wonder of their own unique experience. If you experience folks acting unpredictable during this time period, just recognize this is a conditioning force that will eventually move on. but this could seem like folks are less in balance while experiencing this foreign energetic. With the defined ego center, people without a defined heart center might feel as if they have something to prove or make commitments that are not correct for them. And again, we talked about the defined G center influencing those without, to perhaps wonder where they're headed or where they might find love. Individual circuitry such as this brings melancholy that is best used in creative activities. And because Uranus turned retrograde on July 26 in the 6th line of the 51, this channel of shock initiation will be defined the entire time the nodes are in the 25-46 axis. We're going to be looking at the sun's ravishing line values daily because 70% of the neutrinos we receive come from the sun. And as Ross said in Living with the Program, the lines of the day, when talking about these daily shifts of line values, he said we can always take advantage of the themes of the day. If your strategy and authority doesn't lead you in that direction, you can always notice how the program is affecting others in your environment. So let's get started. August 9th, we begin the day with the sun in the 4th line, the opportunist line of the 7th hexagram, where it is exalted and described as the abdicator, the willingness to accept the judgment of the people and or the rules of law, exalted the grace and wisdom to step down for the benefit of the whole, the capacity of the self to accept the judgment of others. 4th line days we're in the upper trigram, where the focus is more on outward perspective through the themes of friendship, companionship, and networking. But then later on the 9th, the sun then moves up into the 5th line, into the heretic line of the 7th hexagram at 6:05 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. The sun in the 7-5 is described as the general leadership whose authority must be absolute and is sanctioned in times of crisis, exalted the gift of attracting loyalty necessary in harmonizing the potential of society, the capacity of the self through its role to attract loyalty, detrimented the commander isolated from his troops and obsessed with a victory at any price, the lack of loyalty when the self insists on isolation. And as I've said before, the 5th line is about projection. The projection always goes positive, then negative. Positive, they could do it, they'd be great at it, the perfect person for whatever it is. And then if the person doesn't do it, can't do it, for whatever reason it doesn't get done, then the projection turns negative. The person gets punished. The heretic is tied to the stake, as it were. This is a day of suspicion, also a day of universalization, where something can leak out and spread like a virus. There's also a great deal of suspicion and paranoia on a 5th line day, which impacts the nature of relationships. As I said before, given the projection field, it's not paranoia if they're truly out to get you. Seduction also being a theme of the 5th line day. And then on the 10th, the sun then moves up into the 6th line, so up into the role model line of the 7th hexagram at 5:32 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. The sun in this 7-6 is the administrator, the ability to share and justify apportion power. Exalted the power to communicate the framework of responsibility, the capacity of the self through its role to communicate responsibly. Detrimented the bureaucrat whose lust for power eventually destabilizes the organization. The role of the self to seek power through communication of responsibility. And 6th line days, I like to think about, we're on the roof of the hexagram, like being on the roof of a building, where when we're on the roof of a building, we don't tend to look at the building as much as what's going on in the neighborhood, what's down the road, things of that nature. And Ra talked about not getting stuck with your head in the clouds because you'll have something banging into your shins under the 6th line influence. So this is a day where there's a lack of focus on what's going on around you because folks are looking beyond their immediate environment. And like 3rd line days, it could be certain dangers of not seeing a car coming, not seeing a bill coming. And then also on the 10th, Mercury moves from the 59th gate to the 40. bringing us another definition here. Mercury in mythology was the messenger of the gods. So this is about communication and expansion of human consciousness through communication. And what, and Ra talked about that it's not just as words, but also as music. And what do we need to communicate in life? Well, Ra said that we communicate the message of our design Mercury through the medium of our personality Mercury. What might be communicated when Mercury is in the 40? Well, I'd expect to hear people talk about having enough to eat or not, or feeling alone even in a crowd. This is the gate of aloneness, deliverance, the part of transition between struggle and liberation. And Mercury in the first line of the 40 is recuperation, exalted, the ability to relax and enjoy the fruits of one's behavior. The ego's strength to enjoy being alone. The detriment is the ego uncomfortable with being alone too long. And when we've got Mercury in the 40 and we've got Neptune in the 37, we have the channel of community until the 14. This definition brings the energy where people will wonder where they belong in the scheme of things and then try to live that out. It could be a time of thinking about marriage and family as a foundation of community. Fairness becomes important under the influence of the channel of community, and balance becomes important in all aspects of life. People explore how they fit into the community and on a mystical level where they fit into the universe and what their true purpose is. And the defined solar plex could bring folks to feel more confident in having confrontations. But obviously that's another conditioning factor of the transits. On the 11th, the sun then moves from the 7th hexagram up into the 4, and the Earth moves from the 13 to the 49. And so we've got the Earth in the 49th gate of principles, revolution, ideally the transformation of forms based on the highest principles and not simply for power. This shift happens at 4:59 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, and we've got the sun in the 4th gate of formulization, youthful folly, the energy to beguile and succeed despite ignorance, freedom from retribution. The sun in the first line of the 4. Let's see. Okay, the sun in the first line of the 4 is pleasure. Ultimate pleasure cannot be achieved without perfect timing. Exalted, the instinct to know the right moment and circumstances where pleasure is rewarded and not punished. The potential to recognize that there is a natural timing to the understanding process. Detrimented timing is not a product of discipline. Exaggerated self-discipline leads to abuse of pleasure. The potential to recognize, but the urge to force the timing. And so we've got the sun down here in the lower trigram, first, second, third lines being lower trigram, which these are days when people are more looking inward. They're more absorbed in their own process. The theme of the first line day is a fear or anxiety that needs to be investigated. So it's a day to study, not to act. It's a day to look into things, not to jump. It's a day to look at things you don't understand, can't make sense of, or don't know. And then also on the 11th, Mars moves from the 56 to the 31. And so this is this, and also Jupiter leaves the 29 and moves into the 59. Venus is still retrograde in the 29, so this channel definition remains. So let's start with Mars. Mars is in the gate of leading influence, the law of friction, whether active or passive, that engenders transference and thus influence. Mars in the first line of the 31 is manifestation. Influence cannot exist in a vacuum. Exalted, the sun cannot hold back its light, thus its influence on every life. The natural expression of leadership. Detriment, the absorption of light that in darkness can only promise manifestation, the unnatural expression of leadership. And Ra talked about Mars being an extraordinary and immature energy resource that lacks refinement and is subject to outbursts. Mars represents the warrior archetype in mythology, and by following our strategy and authority, we slowly refine the energy of our design and personality. Mars is from immaturity to wisdom. Also on the 11th, we've got Jupiter moving from the 29 to the 59, where it's leaving Venus behind. In human design, Jupiter is generalized law, the electromagnetic central operating theater for the way in which the solar system operates. And living by the law can gain great good fortune. Activations in our human design chart of Jupiter tell us a law that we must live by. To benefit from the generosity only comes from a deep obedience to honoring your own law, your own individual strategy and authority. Jupiter in the 59th gate of sexuality, dispersion, the ability to break down barriers to achieve union. Jupiter in the 59-1 is the preemptive strike, exalted, the authority and vitality that in understanding purpose and direction can recognize and eliminate barriers before they become impregnable. The power of fertility to impregnate. Detriment in this position, the ability and the intelligence to recognize, but a deep indecisiveness about how and when to act. The potential of fertility limited by uncertainty. On the 12th, the sun then moves into the second line, so leaving the investigative line, moving into the hermit line of the fourth hexagram at 4:25 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. The sun in the 4-2 is described as acceptance. The recognition of limitation in oneself and others leads to tolerance and the suspension of judgment. Exalted, the glorification of feelings. The mother who always pardons the errant child. The potential to recognize that there is not everyone, everyone can understand. Detriment, the assertion of the ego that at the expense of others' failures. The potential to take advantage of the lack of understanding in others. Second line days, everybody's waiting for something. They're waiting to be called, particularly called for their natural talents. People get stuck in their own trip, so it's not really a great day to have a big social event because no one really wants to come. They'd rather just, remain home under that hermit energy. Then also on the 12th, retrograde Venus moves out of the 29. So this definition moves on, and it joins the sun in the 4. Venus is very powerful and deeply misunderstood according to Ra. It brings morality, natural law in which we deal with the other and the consequences of the world around us, and what disturbs you on a moral level. Well, your design and personality, Venuses, tell us about the moral dilemma that you're going to work with in your life according to Ra, and that if you don't act with moral clarity, Venus can be unkind in its retribution. Venus is in the 4th gate of formulization, youthful folly, the energy to beguile and succeed despite ignorance, freedom from retribution. Being retrograde, Venus backs into the 6th line of the 4, which is excess. Repeated and conscious abuse of norms will not escape discipline. Exalted, the development through experience and of techniques to apply self-restraint. the potential in the logical process to recognize when the understanding is not complete and have the patience to wait it out. Detrimented the gall to accept punishment as the price of excess, despite recognizing the incompleteness of a lack of patience with the process. On the 13th, the sun then moves into the third line, the martyr line of the fourth hexagram at 3:51 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. The sun is exalted in the 4-3 due to Venus also being in the fourth hexagram and is irresponsibility. The general refusal to apply oneself diligently when one can get by with much less effort. Exalted where art is more valued than the artist. The potential to enjoy the formulas with no regard for their practical application. And third line days, the line of the martyr. We're talking about trial and error process, bonds made and broken, a system of discovery by figuring out what doesn't work. Things bump into us under that third line energy, so be careful on the roads, be careful of swinging doors, swinging elbows. Might be a day when we have bonds made or bonds broken. Again, a trial and error process is a good material day. It's a good day to do business and work on the material plane, but you have to be careful because things can go wrong and things that will lead to discovery. On the 14th, the sun then moves into the fourth line, the opportunist line of the fourth hexagram at 3:16 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. The sun is exalted in the fourth line of the fourth hexagram, which is the lyre, role-playing as an art form. The actor, exalted fantasy protects and nurtures a sense of purpose and reason, no matter how misguided. The potential to find or illustrate the formulas through fantasy. In fourth line days, we're moving out of the lower trigram with first, second, third line, which is more of an inward process, to the upper trigram, fourth, fifth, sixth lines, which is more about looking outward. We have the themes of friendship, companionship, networking. Fourth line days are great for social interaction. And then also on the 14th, the Mercury moves from the 40th gate and hexagram. So this definition goes away and up into the 64 up here in the head center. And we talked about Mercury being about communication. So what might be communicated when Mercury is in the 64? Well, I'd expect people to talk about past experiences. This is the gate of confusion before completion. Mercury in the first line of the 64 is conditions, exalted in penetrating to the center, the understanding that instills the necessary harmony to survive disorder. Among the confusion, the difficulty in finding the point. Detriment and the powerful temptation when having transition insight to hasty action. The urge to act when you think you've made sense of confusion. And then on the 15th, we have the sun moving up into the fifth line of the fourth hexagram at 2:41 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. The sun in the 4-5 is seduction, allowing others to assume responsibility as a shield against potential punishment. Exalted, unearned reward and recognition and the potential to succeed through the understanding of others. Detriment, a life of lip service to antiquated and unsatisfactory values. Cynicism, the potential for cynicism that comes with always having to acknowledge the understanding of others. And a fifth line days, again, this is the heretic, So it's about projection, and we talked about that earlier. So no matter what the energies are that are conditioning you during the week, just remember that this is an experience about being a passenger who's riding in a vehicle driven by the magnetic monopole. Enjoy the scenery. Let the vehicle take you where you need to go through using your strategy and authority. Every day is a blessing, no matter what the dramas that beckon to distract us. We're all here just giving the performance of a lifetime on this world stage. Just take some time to observe the play as well as act your part by remembering that you're a spiritual being that's having a human experience. I want to thank you for checking out New World Birth, and the next segment of the weekly neutrino forecast will be for August 16th, 2015. Should be available on the 15th, when we'll continue to look at the influence of the heavenly bodies as they transit the sky and the hexagrams of the I Ching. You can check us out on Facebook, Blogger, or YouTube, and I invite you to contact me at newworldbirth@yahoo.com if you have any questions or wish to get a reading. And I am providing readings, so please contact me if you would like if you'd like a reading. I would love to provide you a reading during these uncertain times. You'll need to be able to either call me in Maine in the USA or connect with Skype to receive your reading. We're also accepting donations to keep these reports freely available. And again, contact me at newworldbirth@yahoo.com if you want instructions on how to make a donation, or getting a reading is a great way to support us here. As always, I'm blessed that you've taken the time to connect with my passion for these ancient mysteries and their application to our journey during this incarnation. The light in me honors the light in you. Namaste, in Lakesh, and as Ra would say, love yourself. All right, thanks for everybody, and look forward to connecting with you next week.